Let's go ahead and get started this morning. We'll be back in the book of Ephesians. Before we get started, Brother Doug, you open us in a word of prayer. Ephesians Chapter 2 is where we're going to get, we're going to back up a little bit, like we always do. In fact, somebody said to me last week, they said, why do you review something every week? Why do you take the time to go back? You could get so much further if you didn't review. Well, they're correct. We would get a lot further if we didn't review. But Brother Hank, it's very important to me that we take a look at this as an entire letter. You know, I'm 53. So I am the definite product of what they call the MTV generation. Justin, I want the story in 3 minutes. And we've learned to live on 30-second ads. Tell me it quick, blip, you know. But that's permeated the church. And you can get a lot of good things out of this book or any other book that way. But Paul didn't write 4 30-second ads and send them off. He looked at this church. And Brother Hank, remember last week and the week before, and the week before, and the week before, he wrote this to a good church. This is the saints at Ephesus, okay? This is a group of people who trusted God and loved each other. But he still took the time to write this book as a whole to say, this is what you need. This will help you. Justin, when I look at you and all the good things that God is accomplishing in your life, this is what you need to know. And I just don't want to chop it all up. When we're done, I don't want to remember this passage or this passage. I want us to remember the flow of the letter written to the Ephesians. And because we do it that way, we do take some time to back up. Now, we're going to do that again this morning. So remember chapter 1, which we won't review a whole lot at the beginning, because chapter 1, Brother Moyer, remember, he gave us God's plan, which started before he even created man. He knew man that was going to fail because he's God, and he knew man was going to fail, and he already had a plan in place to redeem man because his great love was going to save man from the judgment man was going to put on himself. And his son willingly came and paid the price to buy us out of the slave block. And then the Spirit came and sealed us. And we had all of this wonderful truth that's given to us. But then he did this strange thing, he being Paul. Remember, he gave us all of that with great words. Magnificent, large sentence, covering it all. Can't miss it. Don't even take a breath to stop. But Justin, then he stopped and he prayed. And he prayed that we might understand, because it's not enough that we hear these things. It's not enough that we just check them off and get them on the test. This has to become part of our life. We really have to understand this. So in verse 17, that's exactly what he prayed for. He prayed that we would have the spirit of wisdom and the knowledge of him. Because no matter what I write down here, Brother Hank, if you're going to live the successful Christian life, you need to know him, and you need to have the spirit of wisdom to understand things, to look at things the way he sees them. And so he prays that this is what we would have. And then we understand that we're going to need those things so that we can have these. He gives us 3 things. So we need to understand. We need to have knowledge of. This needs to be part of who we are, the hope of his calling. We are called to a purpose. It's his purpose, and we need to have hope in that purpose. Now, the ultimate hope, Brother Maddox, is in the end, our body's going to be restored. But we need to understand that this is not a life that we live, today is terrible, tomorrow is terrible, but someday there is coming a day when no heartache will go. No, we're restored daily. Okay, every day we have restoration. Every day he is growing us to be more like what he wants us to do. We're not struggling through the doldrums, living down here in misery. We're sealed with his spirit. Everything we need, Justin, we have. We have his power. Okay, so this is not something, and we need to get that understanding. We have the hope of his calling today. And then it said this, and I don't know how far we got the last 2 weeks. We might have stopped here. The eyes of your understanding be enlightened, that ye may know what is the hope of his calling, and this is curious, and what is the riches of the glory of his inheritance. Brother Maddox, if we go back to verse 14, it talks about our inheritance. We need to understand we're sealed with the Spirit. That's the earnest, that's the down payment, that we have an inheritance someday. That gives us this guarantee of the hope of his calling. This verse is different, and it's important. Brother Hamilton, this verse says, we are his inheritance. Furthermore, an inheritance is something of great value. You know, even if it's not monetary, you want to go through the house, you want to find the thing that gives you the most memory. It's something that's precious. It might be worth nothing, but it's precious, and it gets the place on the wall, and that was my mom's. It is something of great value. Justin, we are of great value. We are his inheritance. And if we understood the value he places on us, we might not be so tempted to coming a day. We matter to him. And then the third thing. We need to understand this because we need to. And what is the exceeding greatness of his power to usward who believe, according to the working of his mighty power, which he wrought in Christ when he raised him from the dead and set him at his own right hand. So, Ms. Pat, we need this understanding, and we need this knowledge of him so that we could understand the hope of his calling, understand the riches of his inheritance, and understand the power that is given to us. This power is the miracle of salvation. Miss Debbie, I planned on not walking a lot. This morning I was like, I'm not going to walk. I'm going to stay right there. I'm going to be all teacherly. But it's cold in here. I need to walk. I hope I don't start sweating. Be freezing. Too often we get this view. We get this view that, okay, when we're saved, that salvation, Justin, that salvation, we are legally set free. That's true, right? At salvation, we are adopted. We are forgiven. All those things are true. We talked about them in chapter 1. But it is more than that. We kind of get this picture that, okay, all of these things happen, so now I have the golden ticket. I can show up at the gate. Here's the golden ticket. Let me in. We kind of get that view. But now that I'm a Christian, now, Matt, I have to learn and I have to do and I have to strive so that I can gain. Now, we're Baptists, so we don't call it a second blessing. But we kind of live the same way, that we have to gain this thing that now will allow me to accomplish hogwash. At salvation, everything changes. Everything changes. We're made new. We're sealed with a promise, and that sealing gives us all the power we ever need. We can't get any more. It's the power for salvation. It's the power for us to witness. Acts chapter 1, verse 8, but ye shall receive power. It's the power to endure. 2 Corinthians talks about the power to continue, the power not to quit, the power to persevere. It's the power to serve. Colossians chapter 1, verse 9. Stephanie, there is nothing you are lacking. If we get to the place, well, I just need to, there's nothing we need. Salvation, all the power we need, everything happens. This book talks about it, chapter 3, verse 20. Exceedingly great power. That's what we have, the exceedingly great power. So Paul prays, you need to understand that this is who you are. You need to have the wisdom. You need to know him. You need to live in the hope that he's given you. Know that he has this value. And live in the power that you've had since the day you were sealed. So, he begins with telling us who we are. He prays that we might truly understand it. And then he gets to chapter 2. Where really, Justin, he's going to do it all over again. Now he's just going to repetition. You know what happens in ninth grade? You take algebra. You learn a little bit in the first quarter. And then it seems like you're learning the same thing in the second quarter, but you go a little further. And then you learn the same thing, but you go a little further in the third quarter. And then actually they give you word problems and you realize you haven't learned anything. So then you take Algebra 2. And you know what Algebra 2 starts as? Literally, trust me, the same exact thing that Algebra 1 was, to build on it a little bit further. Well, that's what Paul's doing here because that's how we learn. Let me make sure you have that. Now let me take it a little bit further. this beginning passage is usually, no, we're not going to do it either one of these two ways, but let me tell you, you can go through and you'll find almost everyone will break this first 10 verses up in one of these two ways. They'll change a few words, but this is how they look at it. Verses 1 through 3, this is about where the Christian is in his past. Where were we? We were dead. Verses 4 through 6 and 8 and 9, this is the present working. How does the Christian live today? Well, you live alive. You were dead, now you're alive. And then verses 7 and 10, it's the future. What shall you become? And the benefits of you already being saved. And that's we're his workmanship. And so we now can do good things. We now can please God. We now can receive his blessings. And so it usually breaks up in that, or they'll do it this way. I kind of like this one better, by the way. It's a picture of salvation from death, by love, into life, with a purpose, through faith, and the purpose is unto good works. Now, that rings very true, and that would be a good picture. But, Miss Pat, that means I have to get through all those. So we're not going to look at it that way either. Instead, Brother Hamilton, we're just going to be simple. We're going to look at some key words. And I think these key words will take us through and give the same picture. Key words like dead, sin, trespasses, worldliness, Satan, mercy, resurrection, Christ, in the heavenlies. Now, Brother Maury, we won't get that far. But the good thing is Paul's going to touch on it again. And then he's going to pray for it again. And so there's plenty of time. So here we go. Ephesians Chapter 2. Ephesians 2 verse 1 is one of my favorite verses. I just love this verse. And you and Justin hath he quickened. Now you know what that word means. Anytime you hear that word, this is what it means. And Justin, he made you alive. Justin, he made you alive. Doug, you're alive. Miss Pat, God himself made you alive. Well, duh, I'm here breathing. No, that's not what it means. And you hath he quickened, and you hath he made alive, who, this is who you were before salvation, who were dead in trespasses and in sins. Now, all of chapter 1 talks about us being alive in Christ. Chapter 2 begins with, before you were alive in Christ, you were dead in sin. In Christ, you're alive. In sin, in this world, in trespasses, you are dead. Wherein, which by the way, this is where we lose a lot of people. Try telling some 20-year-old athletic guy, well, you are dead. No, I'm not. That's a race. I bet I bench more than you. That's not what it's talking about. And we're going to spend a little time to see what it's talking about because it matters. Wherein in times past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience, among whom also we all had our conversation in times past, in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature the children of wrath, even as others. I'm writing to you, and this is who you were, but let me tell you, everybody else, all the others, they were dead too. There's nobody who misses this dead. And Matt, see, you're young, you keep up with all the movies, you know all this stuff. 50% of the time, if I watch a movie, first, I can't carve out 2 hours. I get bored. But if they nag me enough, I'll try to watch the movie with them. Dad, why can't you just spend some time with us? Now, like Josh can send Katie in there. That's even harder to say no to. For a moment, when I start watching, like you watch Star Wars. You know what Star Wars? I'm watching Star Wars, and it's all about good versus evil, and there's this mysterious force in the back that controls evil. I just think every good story they steal from the Bible. I just change. Okay, and you go into the second trilogy, Anakin. Anakin's father is the Force, and he's the son of prophecy to restore right in the world. And what does that sound like? Well, here, one of the most popular shows in the last decade, and I've never watched this show, but I hear about it all the time, is The Walking Dead. It's zombies. It's people who aren't in control and can't control themselves, and they just live by the lust of their flesh to consume all the time. Justin, that is not an original idea. Paul right here says, you are the walking dead. You may be alive, But spiritually, you're dead. In fact, he goes on to tell us in chapter 4 that, well, actually, that's an important verse, chapter 4. Verse 18, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God. You can't really see, and you are separated from God. Well, but no, you are totally separate. Dead is separated from God. And he begins to roll out this picture of the walking dead. Oh, here's another one. I've had this argument with your sister. Matrix is a total copy of the Bible. That's all it is. He took a pill, and now he can see how he really is. And he's been controlled and a slave. Come on. At least C.S. Lewis told us he was writing an analogy. The book opens by giving us this picture. All men are apart from God. All men are dead. All, even as others, not just the ones I'm writing to. So what does that mean? What is this picture? All right. Justin, because I know this is where we lose that 20-year-old. Here's how usually I try to deal with it. Okay. Listen, 20-year-old, no one will deny our world is in trouble, right? Can anyone deny our world is in trouble? It's a mess. We got problems. Okay, and here's where the answer men tell us. Here's what they give us. The answer men will tell us we have social problems, Mr. Doug. We need to better understand each other. If we would better understand each other, then we could come together of all of our different races and different faiths and different beliefs and different educational levels and different economic levels, and we could live in harmony. This also would relieve racial tension, so we just need to better learn how to understand each other. Others will come up, and I copied some of this stuff, straight from what they're telling me I'm supposed to do. Others will come up, and this is what they're going to say. Well, we don't really have relationship issues one with another because, Brother Maddox, you and I can't have a good relationship until you have a good relationship with you and I have a good relationship with me. The problem is not our relationships out here. It's not social. The problem is psychological. Our self-esteem is such a mess. See, we've been traumatized by the way we've been treated in our past or even now. See, Justin, the problem is my environment won't let me be who I am. So you just need to let me be who I am. I can't cultivate my self-esteem, and I'm so misunderstood. If I can just come into a good place with myself, then we can have good place with others. Tell me that doesn't ring true. If you listen to what's being pumped out on the news, this is what's pumped out in every conversation. This is the problem, and those who don't agree are the bad guys. We don't need to have harmony with them. We need to shoot them. Okay, that's the picture. This passage says man's problem is not social, it's not psychological, it's not political. See, we could go a long way. It's not racial, it's not economical, it's not educational. We could put all the alls in there we want to. It's none of those things. This passage says man's problem is very simple. He's dead. Man's problem is he's dead. He can't see. Chapter 4, verse 18 says he's alienated from God and his mind is darkened and he can't see a thing. He's destitute of real life, of real understanding, of real hope, of real purpose, of real truth. All those things come from God. Separated from God, man can't be anything but empty and frustrated. It's impossible. He can't. And he can't have relationship with God. How are we supposed... God's the creator. How are you supposed to have purpose, Brother Wayne, with no relationship with him? And you can't see him. And you can't see the way he sees. Hence, everything you do is going to be empty. All is vanity, saith the preacher. It accomplishes nothing. And you get frustrated. And why is it the same? And why does it happen again? Because we keep doing it the way the world says that it should make sense. We can't enjoy God's blessings. And we're not sick. And we're not misunderstood. We're dead. No, a dead man does not need renewal. He does not need restoration. He does not need repair. He does not need resuscitation. Good for you. I misspelled that all over the place, by the way. A dead man needs resurrection. If we're going to have life, we must be born again. And that's the power that comes with salvation. That's how he begins this chapter. That's how you have to look at everything he's about to say. Now, we'll keep going until we run out of time. The next word he throws out there is not just dead, and you hath he quickened who were dead, but we're dead in trespasses and sins. We're going to look at sin first. Because most of the time, we would identify sin this way. Then if I was going to identify sin, I would pop off with sin. It's the breaking of God's law. It's good, right? Sin is moral evil. Because actually, God is truth and God is morality, so sin is moral evil. Or sin is anything against God. Now I got you with the anything word. And Brother Hamilton, we tend to look at it and then say, okay, so murder is sin, or a drunkard is sin, or theft is sin, or child abuse is sin. We take all these things and they're sin. We have to understand. All those things are sinful acts, Brother Justin. But you know the word used right here for sin, and there's a couple different words used for sin. Paul knows the word he was using, and they used the word hamartia, which, Matt, that means that you're standing at the dartboard, you throw the dart at the board, and you hit the wall. That means you missed the mark. Okay, this passage is telling us that we're not dead because we sin. We sin while we're dead, but we are dead not because of what we do. We're dead because of what we didn't do. We're dead because we didn't do it. No, but Doug, we can't do it. What are we supposed to do? Well, 1 Peter's going to tell us that we're supposed to be ye holy, as I am holy. Christ is going to tell us in Matthew chapter 5 that we're supposed to be perfect, as my Father is perfect. Brother Maddox, we haven't done that. We're sinners because of what we haven't done. And we can't. Paul could have used lots of other words here. He used a word that starts out, you are dead because you cannot hit the mark. Here's the picture. I was trying to come up with one. So, I came up with Cuba, but then some people were going to why do you want to jump to Cuba? I guess if we go to Clearwater, you could probably see across and get Texas at some point. So we'll make it Texas. Justin, we're going to take you to Clearwater, and we're going to take you, Matt, and Ben. So we get that with the same age. It wouldn't be fair you competing with a fat old man. So we're going to take you to Clearwater. We're going to put you right there, and the goal is to jump from the beach and land in Texas. Now you're not going to make it. But now, you're going to get out there pretty far. Ben, he's a little older with shorter legs, so he's going to give it everything he can. He'll probably cheat and take a running jump, but he's still going to be a little bit behind you, so you can say, morally, I'm further across than he is. And then Matt, he's like Elastic Man. So, it's getting pretty old, though. Elastic, tends to crack, gets brittle, you got to be careful. So then Matt's going to take his leap, and maybe he even gets further than you. Okay, so he can look back and say, I am better than Justin, and I am better than Ben. And if you want to live your life that way, just fine. But none of you hit Texas. And until you hit Texas, you're dead. No. The gospel story is real about, we're all in the water. We're all in the water. And the water is doing its damage, and you got the salt, and you got the water, and you don't have the right food, and you got sharks, and you got stingrays, and you got jellyfish, and it's a dangerous place to be. And there's nothing you can do to get out of it until the gospel boat called Jesus comes around. Do you want to get in the boat? You want to get in the boat? Because the boat, in this case, takes you to Texas. That's where it's going to get to. We're going to get to in a minute. We're already in the heavenlies. We're already there. Okay. But he starts out, and very poignantly, he uses the word, sin is you miss the mark. You're dead because of what you didn't do. And you can't. And then he goes on, he also uses that word trespass. And the second word, that word trespass, now Doug, this is kind of the do, okay? The trespass, this is the idea of slip or fall, or say you were, like me. See, I used to, Elastic Man, I used to just run down the steps, or if no one was looking, jump down the steps. But now, man, I got to kind of look at the steps, turn the feet sideways. I'm making sure that I plan it. Well, trespass is kind of the picture of, okay, I'm looking, I'm trying to make sure, but I slip, I fall. I fall off the path. It's not like planned rebellion. There's pictures for that. There's words for that. But this is you missed the mark, and even in all of your efforts to try, you still can't even stay on the path. You're still going to slip and fall. You're still going to be off the path. Everything that I can do, just think about it, Doug. If I'm dead, if I'm blind, which I am, right? Pre-salvation, every man and all others were dead. And I'm blind. And I don't see like he sees, and I don't understand like he understands. I'm totally incapable. How am I going to stay on the path? I don't even know what the path is. The path is in Texas. I'm there walking on Clearwater Beach saying, hey, yeah, I'm doing good. I'm in the middle of the water, 8 feet in. Proverbs 14 tells us there's a way that seems right to a man. Justin, here's the problem. People have taken their big jump, and they think they're doing fine. And that's why when you want to tell them they're dead, I'm not dead. There's a way that seems right. But the end is death. Hey, by the way, we're supposed to get to grace. We probably don't get to grace. This would help us a whole lot. If we saw people as dead instead of wanting to fight, we might offer grace more often instead of a good slap upside the head. Our approach to them might be a little bit different. If we saw them as those who are needing and who are blind and who have no hope, so man is dead in sin and in trespasses. We got that, Matt. That makes sense? We go on? So we go on. Guess what the next word is? The next word, now I'm going to ask the question. So man is dead in sin and in trespasses. What's he doing? Verse 2. Wherein in time past he walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air. What's man doing? He's walking in the way of the world. He's living worldly. No. You could try to be the smart aleck. I would be the smart aleck. So, of course he's living in the world. He's born here. He's living in the world. Duh. Genius. Matt, that's not talking about living in this place, the world. That's the word cosmos. Its opposite is chaos. The word cosmos has to do with order. And Justin, that's why anytime we find the word cosmos used as world, we say it's talking about the world system, the way the world runs. So the man is dead. He can't see. So what's he doing? He's walking in the way of the world. He's walking the way the world says. The world, Miss Pat, we want to look at the world and say, the world is such chaos. It makes no sense. It shouldn't make any sense to the Christian. Okay, but it makes perfect sense to the dead. The walking dead, it makes sense. It has an order. It has a political order, and it has a social order, and it has a relational order. It has order. It has an economical order. It all makes sense. They all want to do the same thing. They all compete the same way. Which, Justin, that's what we look, it makes no sense to me. I don't really watch news. I read it, on the web in the morning, and then I listen to it in the radio, back and forth between places, and it's totally depressing. Because I'm sitting there driving. It just makes no sense. And every once in a while, I'm stupid, and I bring that up to the person or the location I'm going, to this law firm administrator, or to this person ahead of litigation, and every single time, I'm amazed that it made sense to them. And usually, what I need to be is a meeting that you're mad, and I show up, and I leave, and you're all happy. Does not end up that way. Because all this stuff that I just heard, perfect illustration. We want to talk about abortion. Here, I'm going to do it this way. Even if we remove the Bible completely out of the abortion conversation, which, by the way, no Christian can. But even if you remove it totally, Matt, if you remove it totally, it's simple, basic common sense. Here's what happened. All right, so I'm a blue-haired crazy who says, I don't want any man telling me what I can or can't do. Well, let me tell you, it was 7 men on the Supreme Court in 1973. 7 men told every woman in the world what they could or couldn't do. Okay? Nowhere did we vote. Nowhere was there a law passed. Because a law couldn't be passed, they forced it to the Supreme Court, and they overstepped. All the Supreme Court did was simply say, look, here you go. It's not in the Constitution. This phrase of the Constitution says if it's not in the Constitution, you guys get to decide. They didn't take anything away. They simply said, you get to decide. You get to decide. You haven't had a vote for 50 years. Now you have a vote. Now you actually have voice. So go vote. Theoretically, every state could now pass a law that says abortion up to whatever time. They now actually have a voice. All of this rhetoric makes absolutely positively no sense. They're fighting for the right not to have a voice. They're fighting for a right to be told what to do by a few men. And by the way, pass a law. Laws can be changed. A new election, new law. We're not Nebuchadnezzar. All they did is put it back in the populace hands. Why is the populace so grouchy? Why, if I don't get that? I'll never get it because it doesn't make sense to me. I don't think the way the world thinks, but it does, and it makes sense to them. And when it rolls out this picture, let me tell you, we can go on and on and on and on and on. The world doesn't make sense to a Christian. If you get to a place where you're saying, Stephanie, if you get to a place where you're saying, well, if only this would happen, I don't care, if only this person would get elected, if only we would look at life this way, if only this would happen, then the world would be better. If you have anything in that place outside of man getting saved, then you're in trouble. Because you're depending on something other than God. And the world is a mess, and the only thing that it can help it fix it is new life. Why? Because what is man? Dead. Man is the walking dead, and nothing, what does a dead man need? Alive. Nothing's going to fix him until he's alive. We'll do one more word. Here's the next word. This is a short word. Wherein in times past you walked according to the course of this world, worldliness, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. The next word, Satan, the prince of the power of the air. That's a lot of words, so I just made it Satan. Like according to the spirit of the cosmos, that's a lot of words. We just made it worldliness. So let's catch up with what we know. Man is dead. Man responds to his environment, which is evil. I mean, this makes sense. This doesn't make sense. Now, it's going to tell us man is controlled by Satan. He's the god of this world. Well, Brother Jeremy, you're trying to tell me that Satan is involved with each and every one. He's a pretty busy guy. If you think he's... No, I wouldn't say that. I'd say this. He controls the narrative. He controls the glasses you put on. He controls what you look at and how you see it. That's why, his world is frustrating to a person who spends any time right here. I mean, Don't you ever want to just shake somebody and say, how can you make that decision? How does that make sense? How can you continue in your sin? It's easy, dude. What's your problem? People say, I would be a Christian. Preacher, I would be a Christian, but you see, I just don't want to give up my freedom. I get to do what I want to do. I live how I want to live. I do what I want. Coach Abai would say, oh, fool. You're blind. You're a slave. You're in bondage. Here, back to the movies. Man, I couldn't think of any movie. I've seen it in lots of movies. I kept thinking of some Star Trek edition, but, you probably wouldn't know that. Actually, there's a bunch of old people. They probably would remember it. Star Trek's full of Bible analogies, as it was written by atheists. But there's always a movie where somebody is hallucinating or some magical spell, and they think this is water, and so I'm going to drink it, and it's sand, or it's poison, or it's, well, here's that person. I just do what I want to do. I live my own life. Well, Satan's got those glasses on you, and it's so distorted. You're so blind to reality. You say, what matters to me in my life is security. So I chase things that decay. What matters to me is that I be loved. And so I run around with people all the time and say, take care of me, 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 me. And I try to consume them, and I invest in no one. And guess what? I end up really lonely and frustrated and grouchy. I just do what I want. You are so blind and in such bondage, which is why we pray, Lord, open their eyes. Lord, help them see. I just want to be happy. Preacher, I don't really want anything. I'm not a things person. I'm not a power person. I just want to be happy and enjoy life. And so I chase after things that will never, ever, ever satisfy. And I just keep switching to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And failure and failure and failure. And I just keep chasing. And I try to tell myself, I'm okay being the rat in the wheel. How can you be this fat rat in the wheel? Because he's in charge of this world. I just want to live. Only way to live is to die. Then, Justin, you get to be a dead man walking. Now, I'm walking in real life. We didn't get to mercy. We didn't get to grace. We didn't get to in Christ. Or we didn't get to in the heavenlies. But as soon as I'll be willing to die, I am placed in the heavenlies. Now I'm no longer dead. I'm alive right in front of him. I'm a citizen of heaven. I'm a child of the King. Now I'm his inheritance, and he gives me one. Now life has purpose. Now life has power. Now life has joy. Now life has complete. Now life can really be lived. Close in a word of prayer this morning.